Welcome to or welcome back to my channel. My name is LaShawn and this is Lush Uncut. Reading from the New York Post. A Harvard Kennedy School Institute of Politics survey released Wednesday found that even as Trump's approval rating among young Americans remains stable, Democrats' favorability numbers have plummeted 25 percentage points since the fall of 2020 to just 23% from the relatively dizzying heights of 48%. The article continued. Asked to compare the presidencies of Trump and his predecessor, Joe Biden, a plurality of 41% said America was better off under the 46th president, and 25% said the country is better off now. Now, this is not something that is groundbreaking news. This has been a trend, I think, that a lot of people noticed in the 2024 election when a good amount of Gen Z, and specifically Gen Z males, started to veer towards the right and towards Donald Trump. Now, there are a lot of explanations as to why this trend started and has continued. Number one, I think it's just simple youthful rebellion. Whether or not they want to admit it, the Democrats have become the party of the elite. They are the party that have held on to the power structures in this country for the last 20 years. And simultaneously they have become the man. And one thing that young people are going to do, they're going to rebel against the man. So I think that's a portion of it. But I think also Donald Trump has made being a Republican cool again. When I think someone pictures a Republican, maybe 20 so years ago, they would think of a man in a suit, the very business type that only cares about taxes and deregulation. Now, the typical, Republican male is going to be a blue collar working class man that's literally, just trying to provide for himself and his family. Being able to transform that image of what a Republican male looks like, I think, when he did that, Donald Trump really opened up the doors to welcome a whole new demographic of people that would have never considered themselves to be Republican or MAGA or whatever the case may be. And I think that message has really landed quite well with young Gen Z males. However, in addition, though, I think the main reason that the Democrats' favorability is just continuing to plummet is because for whatever reason, they cannot let go of the woke stuff.
It's about making sure that there is white supremacy in this country. And if we're honest, we will say that. It is about making sure we will make sure that people who DEI is really all these code words. You used to use woke. I asked you to define what woke meant. You couldn't really define it for me. Tell me what it means again.
Woke ideology is taking extreme views of American culture and trying to tear down America from the inside out and go outside of our cultural norms and invade every corporation, university, and other institutions.
What is DEI?
That's incorrect.
Tell me that's incorrect. But what is DEI? Tell me again.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, and trying to guarantee outcomes instead of guarantee opportunity.
Cabinet looks like DEI.
I was speaking. If I could just finish.
I want us to not get off the rails because
she just said we're all white supremacists. We gotta address this, don't we?
Saying a whole swath of voters and saying they voted because they're racist or misogynist, not
I didn't
because
say those weren't my words, yours. But go ahead.
Okay, but
you said it was about white supremacy.
I said it was
Democrats
about
will
white
keep
supremacy.
losing if they do that.
All the voters were white supremacists, but it's not about eggs. She said it was about pocketbook issues. It's not about pocketbook issues.
You don't think people were at all motivated by the state of the economy,
Of course they were. Absolutely. But yes, and you're smart enough to know yes, and yes, they were upset about pocketbook issues. And they're also upset about what people are.
They do have an opportunity, but we're treated to sort of.
I'm sure you guys get the point. The crazy thing about it is, again, the Democrats have not realized for whatever reason that this stuff just does not land the same. It worked for them in 2020. It definitely did not work in 2024, even though they ran the most wokest, most DEI campaign that has ever been ran in the history of American politics. People did not go for it. And I doubt that they're going to go for it in 2026 for the midterms. And they are especially not going to go for it in the general elections that are coming up in 2028. So the Democrats have really got themselves in quite a pickle because now they are trying to find a balance between moving away from the woke stuff while appeasing their woke, crazy leftist foot soldiers that have been doing all the dirty groundwork of transforming, the schools and the colleges and in entertainment and in all those areas where the narrative have been very complementary to woke ideologies. They are needing those people to go out and do the work. So now they have to find messaging that is more, palatable to the everyday working class American, but woke enough that it appeases the appetite of the crazy leftists that they have now, unfortunately, started to depend on to do all the hard work, because you're never going to see the big elites like a Nancy Pelosi or a Chuck Schumer or like a Barack Obama really go out and like do the dirty work of really talking to people. They are going to send out their little leftist minions to do it. And now you can see the splitting apart of the two factions of the Democratic Party, those that are trying to moderate and those that have decided to go even further to the left. Now, a good representation of those that are trying to moderate is California's Governor Gavin Newsom. Newsom found himself going viral a couple of weeks ago when I think he started a podcast and he had Charlie Kirk on, and he tried in a very poor attempt to distance himself from the trans issue. Let's take a look at that clip.
But would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace, that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue.
So, of course, like I said, it was a very poor attempt to distance himself from the trans stuff because, as you can see, he says, yes, it's unfair to have males in women's sport, but however, there's still all of these things that we have to consider. So it was a very, mediocre, bland, non-answer answer that you can get from the stereotypical politician like a Gavin Newsom. And we all know that at the end of the day, Gavin Newsom is not going to be someone that's going to champion the rights of women to compete with women or really stand up against the transgender movement in just general. He's not going to do it. Honestly speaking, I don't even think that he believes any of that stuff to his core, but Gavin Newsom is a very slimy politician, and he is going to flip-flop whenever it's politically convenient. Now, an example of someone that is moving further and further and further to the left is, of course, AOC and Bernie Sanders. I'm pretty sure you've seen it online that they're doing their Fight the Oligarchy tour across America. Here's a quick clip of Bernie Sanders talking at one of those rallies, and there's a lot that he said here that I think is very worthwhile when it comes to kind of predicting the messaging that the leftists are going to use in the next upcoming election. So let's take a look.
So what we need to do is to understand and not let the establishment beat us down. Economic rights are human rights. What that means is that Musk should not be able to own himself 5 times more than half of the households in America. What it means, and this is not a radical idea. It is not a radical idea. We are the richest country in the history of the world. We are not a poor country. We do not have to have people sleeping out on the street or kids going hungry.
Okay, so you see what Donald Trump, what Bernie Sanders is trying to do here. And I think what the far leftists are going to do is that they are going to actually try to leave some of the social issues and some of the woke stuff behind, or at least try to attempt to moderate on that. I feel like AOC and the Bernie Sanders know that those are losing battles, so they are not worth fighting if they ever, care to ever be in power again in this country. So they're going to slowly start to move away from those issues and start talking about class warfare and trying to separate themselves from the elite. Now, one advantage that AOC does have, I think that obviously Bernie Sanders does not, is that she actually believes in the socialist like stuff. Like when AOC describes herself as a socialist, she's serious. She actually she really thinks that socialism is the solution to America's problem. That being said, she's going to come off as authentic, and that is something that Donald Trump has been able to use to get himself back into office, and that is that authenticity. You know what I mean? And young people like authenticity and value authenticity. And AOC, for what, however silly you think that she has been consistent in her opposition to the establishment and the elites. I remember when they announced that Joe Biden was going to drop out of the race, she was the only one that came out and was very, very super critical about it. And she was like, listen, you guys did this without even consulting the voters. At the end of the day, he got the nomination. Like, I remember she had a whole Instagram live, basically laying out her opposition to them, telling Joe Biden that he's not going to be running again. So she really felt like it was a betrayal, and she was vocal about that. So I think that Bernie Sanders and the AOC and the far leftists and the socialists, they're going to use very stereotypical class warfare to say, hey, we are not the elites, right? We are not your problems. They're going to say, yes, the Democrat Party is the party of the elites. So here's a different party, a party that's actually progressive, a party that's actually leftist, a party that actually cares about your health care and cares about your ability to feed your children and afford, reasonable standards of living in this country. And even though the other side are saying that, yes, you need an open economy and deregulation to get this done, and we need less government intervention, we're going to say no. The government are the ones that's supposed to come in and actually fix those issues and provide things that you like, universal health care and free housing for all, and all of these very, stereotypical ideological leftist socialist ideas. And unfortunately, because Americans, and I love America and I love Americans, but there are a lot of Americans that are going to hear that message, especially people that are in the middle to lower class who are struggling. They're going to hear that message and say, you know what? Yes, especially if Donald Trump is not economically successful in his term, that is going to leave the door wide open for an AOC type candidate in 2028. All of that being said, regardless, at the end of the day, the woke stuff is going to have to go.